Hey guys, what I want to share with you in this course is one of the most profound things that I've ever discovered that has made the most effective contribution to my jiu-jitsu, and that is the understanding of weight distribution. The most amazing thing about really understanding weight distribution and implementing it into your game is it gives you the ability to create pressure without using strength. And this course is not just for big people. Bigger people obviously have more weight to their advantage, but even as a smaller person, you're either using your weight or you're not using your weight. You're either being efficient with it or not. And once you understand how to use your weight efficiency, you can make your opponent constantly carry your weight and tire them out at a much quicker pace. And as we know, most athletes, once they start to get tired, they start to gas and their performance drops. And this is really what the understanding of weight distribution and creating pressure allows you to do. So I want to share with you guys my discovery of weight distribution and really how it became such an important aspect of my game. 22 years ago, in 2000, Rickson was getting ready to fight in the Coliseum. And he had injured his groin and he wasn't able to train for about 9 months as he was allowing his groin to recover. And so during that time, we had a guy who was currently the world champion. He was just flying back from Hawaii into LA to basically head home, and he decided to stop by the academy to train with Rickson. So that night, Rickson taught the class, and after the class, Rickson put us all to train. So we all started training, and then out of the corner of my eye, what I saw this visiting black belt, again, who was the current world champion and had just got back from winning the Pan Ams. He actually asked Rickson to train, and they started training. Well, what do you know? Within 2 minutes of them starting to roll, the whole mat had cleared off. Everyone was sitting on the sides and watching them train. And the training was going at a very, very fast pace. So it was a very, very back and forth match, back and forth, at a very, very high pace. And eventually Rickson caught him the first time in an armbar after a few minutes. And then they slapped hands and they started going again. And after about 3 or 4 minutes of them going, he tapped him again. I saw him tap, but I didn't really notice. I didn't recognize what Rickson had caught him with. And so after the class, I went up to Rickson and I asked him, I said, Rickson, I was sitting on the wall. I didn't really have a good angle to see what you caught him with. What did he tap to? What did you catch him with? And he told me he tapped to pressure. And so I was completely shocked and blown away. And I had never even experienced that or thought that was even possible, especially Rickson being 40 and this athlete that had come in, the current world champion, was 25 years old and in the best shape of his life. And so Rickson said he tapped to pressure. And what he explained to me was this. He said, Henry, he said, I knew he was going to come at me hard. I knew he was going to come at me at a very fast pace. And he said, I haven't trained in 9 months and my conditioning, my cardio is no good. And so what I did was I forced him to carry my weight for 6-7 minutes. And as he started to gas, as he started to get tired, the pressure basically made him tap. And so it was at that point, I was a brown belt at the time. At that point, I realized and recognized the importance of developing this in my game. And I realized that I too wanted to have that power of being able to tap out people to just pressure. What was huge for me in that experience was seeing a 40-year-old Rickson who was in the worst shape of his life at the time because he hadn't trained in 9 months. His timing was bad. Everything was bad because he was just resting. He couldn't do any cardio because of the groin injury against the current world champion who was 25 years old and in the best shape of his life. And Rickson basically ended up wearing him out. And so I realized as I start to get older, this was going to be a huge balancing factor for me. If I try to keep pace with a younger, more athletic opponent, I'm going to get tired. But if I could force a younger, more athletic opponent to carry my weight, that every time he wanted to move, he had to exert way more energy than what he wanted to, that eventually I would end up winning once they start to gas, once they start to get tired, and once their performance starts to drop. And so I've spent the last 22 years of my life really trying to understand and develop this concept and implement it into my game, this understanding and this idea of weight distribution. And that's what I want to share with you. The understanding of how to use pressure, how to create pressure using your body so that you can gas out even the most athletic, even the youngest, the most athletic guys with the most cardio. It's almost a secret and hidden weapon that we can use, and we can apply it everywhere in our game. And that's the goal for us, really, is to apply it everywhere in our game at all times. So why use your weight? What is the importance of weight distribution and understanding how to create pressure with your body? Well, the understanding of weight distribution and how to create pressure helps us with several different things. One of the things, when you understand how to use your weight and create pressure, one of the things it does is it slows your opponent's movements down. And so if I'm able to create pressure, anytime my opponent moves, instead of him being able to move quickly, what happens is he has to kind of move through that weight or that pressure. He has to fight through way more. So it slows down his movements, which in turn gives me far more time to react. Okay. So that's one thing, is it slows people down. The next thing it does is it allows me to create pressure without using strength. And so that's huge in jiu-jitsu, because in jiu-jitsu, we always talk about not using strength. And the reason we don't want to use strength is because if we use strength, we end up getting tired. We tire ourselves out. And so we're always looking for the most efficient ways to do things. And so by understanding how to use your weight, by understanding how to shift your body and put pressure into different areas of your body at different times, at different points, you can create pressure without using strength, which is huge. And one of the last remaining factors of this idea of creating pressure is, once you understand how to create pressure, you can make it very difficult for your opponent to breathe. If I put pressure on their chest, it makes it difficult for their lungs to expand. And the other thing about creating pressure and understanding how to use pressure is, every time my opponent moves, he has to waste far more energy than what he would normally do. So even if they are able to move, even if they are able to do the movements that they want, it costs them. And that's huge, because in jiu-jitsu, what we know is jiu-jitsu as an art form was created for smaller, weaker individuals to be able to overcome bigger, stronger individuals. And the philosophy of jiu-jitsu is that a lot of times, if I'm a smaller, weaker individual and I'm fighting someone much bigger and stronger, we know it's probably going to take time. Bigger, stronger people usually tire out quicker than smaller individuals, because bigger bodies consume more oxygen. So if you notice the difference between a lightweight fight and a heavyweight fight, what you'll notice is the heavyweights tend to get tired a little bit quicker, while the lighter fighters can maintain a certain pace for a much longer period of time. And it's just the fact that bigger bodies consume more oxygen and they tire out quicker. And so if I'm a smaller person and I'm fighting a much bigger, stronger opponent, what happens is, if I can tire them out, if I can wait for them to tire out, I know my chances of winning the fight start to drastically improve. And how we know that is, if you look at the best fighters in the world, all of the greatest fighters in the world, all of the greatest athletes in the world, all of them, once they start to gas, their performance starts to drop. So if you watch MMA, you'll notice Joe Rogan a lot of times mentioning that when one person starts to open their mouth and they start to get tired, he'll call that out. Oh my gosh, this guy's getting tired. He's starting to breathe out of his mouth. And why that's so significant is, we know that the momentum of the fight will start to shift to the athlete that's fresher. And so really what weight distribution allows you to do is it allows you to tire out your opponent much faster. And even the best athletes in the world, once they get tired, their performance drops and they become much easier. They start to make more mistakes. They start to slow down their movements. And as you guys know, those of you guys that have ever trained, when you're exhausted, you know that your performance is not where it should be. Many people actually, once they start to get tired, they'll actually stop training because they feel like they can't perform how they would normally perform. And so that's really the key to weight distribution and understanding how to use your weight, is it allows us to tire people out much faster than they would normally get tired. So I hope you guys enjoy this course, and I hope you guys are able to implement all of these details into your game. The purpose of this course is just to give you a brief introduction and understanding and help to show you all the positions and how we can effectively use our weight to start to tire our opponent out and slow them down. Okay guys, so the first area where we're going to see, or the first position where we're going to start to just develop our understanding of how to create pressure with our weight is from the cross side. Okay. So Zach, if you will lay down just flat on your back. So from the cross side position, one of the main things for me, in order for me to control the position, is I want to keep my opponent flat. And so the method by which I go about doing that from the cross side is I want to actually put as much weight on him as possible. And the reason is because in order for Zach to basically escape, one of the main things he wants to do is he wants to get to his side. Okay. So the first thing I want you guys to do is just experience what weight feels like. So from here, he can put his hands wherever he wants, right? And the first thing I'm going to do, actually, let's put your hand here, is I'm just going to lay on top of my opponent, okay? And what you'll notice right now is that when I'm laying on him, I have my knees and I have my elbow and my hand on the ground, right? And from this position, how does this feel for you, Zach?
Feels okay.
Feels okay, right? So the first step, the first thing I want to do is when I want to start to apply my weight on my opponent is I'm actually going to just take my knees off the ground. Does that change things?
Yeah, a lot.
Okay. And so what you can hear from his breath, was it harder to breathe?
Yes.
Okay. So all I'm doing right now is with his feet on the ground, right, cross-side, first thing I do is I just take my knees off the ground. And the way that I do that is keeping my knees bent, okay? I just push off my toes and lift my knees. And does that change things?
Yeah.
Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my hand and elbow off there. Did it feel heavier?
Yeah, more heavy.
Okay. And so what you can notice is a difference in your breath. Did you feel like you were holding your breath a little bit?
Yeah.
You were talking like this a little bit?
Yeah, it was hard to breathe.
It was hard to breathe. And what you would notice is I was breathing fine, right? So what happens is there's an incredible amount of pressure on your chest. And a lot of times what happens is when people feel that pressure, they end up holding their breath. Did you notice that you weren't breathing, taking full deep breaths?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So that's huge, because if I'm training with someone, and especially as you start to get tired, if I force you to hold your breath, how long is the match going to last?
Probably not that long.
Not that long. And so that has a tremendous effect. So again, I'm just going to lay. So let's move this way. When I lay down on Zach, what I'm doing is I'm putting my chest across his upper chest. And so one of the ways that I position myself is, if you imagine your chin and your chin runs down the center of your body, what I do is I place my chin at the top of his shoulder so that my center line is lined up with his shoulder line. So I'm here. Elbow on this side of the head, and my hand will be here by his legs. And the reason I have my hand by the legs is because if we turn this angle, what you can see is, because as I start to lift my legs off the ground, what happens is there's a big hole for him to put me in the guard. Okay, I place my hand here to actually prevent guard recovery. But even though my hand is here, I don't put a lot of weight in my hand. And so from here, my toes are on the ground, my knees are bent. I lift my hips off the ground, and then my elbow comes off. So let's turn this way. Beautiful. So I'm here, right? Zach, do you feel any pressure right now?
No.
Not much, right? You're very comfortable. Okay. So the first adjustment I make is just keeping my knees bent, and I lift my hips. How does that feel now? Heavier?
A lot heavier.
A lot heavier? Just keep talking, Zach. So
Okay.
just keep talking.
Yeah, it's feels okay.
Feels. Now I take my elbow off the ground. Does that feel worse?
Now it's a lot worse.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so from here, I'm just resting. And you can hear no difference in my voice. Now, Zach, if you try to turn on your side, just turn on your side a little bit towards me or away from me.
Yeah.
Does that feel hard to turn on your side?
It's impossible.
It's impossible? So what you notice is every time you try to turn, it feels like someone's placed like a 500-pound boulder on top of you. Right? And so that's really, really important. When I'm laying on his chest, knees off the ground, any part of my body that's in contact with the ground, there's weight being transferred into it. And so even though my elbow's on this side of the head, I want to make sure my elbow's off the ground and my hand is also off the ground. So that's the first position. Test it out for yourself. See how it feels when you start to take everything off the ground. And one of the most important details about this position is we want to make sure that our hips are above our shoulders and my knees are bent. And so if we turn this angle, when I lay cross-eyed on my opponent, if my feet are out here and my hips are down, do you feel how there's not much pressure?
Yeah. I feel like I can slide out.
Yeah, and you feel like you can start to slide out because there's actually weight going into my hips. If my hips are up, does that feel like more pressure?
Yes.
Yes. And now, if you try to move away from me or slide out, can you slide out?
No. Just gets worse.
So what happens is, the reason that you're not able to move away from me is because once I have my weight distribution on you, you end up carrying me. Even if you start to move, what happens is because my weight is centered on you, you actually carry me with you, as opposed to my hips dropping. So make sure, guys, when you do this, chest to chest, my chin, I just line up my chin with the top of the shoulder, elbow on this side of the head to control head movement. And also, because if my elbow's on underneath the head, what happens is now I have too much weight going into my elbow. If I lift up my hips, this doesn't feel too much pressure, right?
No, not too bad.
Worse. That feels heavier, right? So I want to make sure that my arm is not underneath his head, and my hand will always be by the legs to basically prevent guard recovery. So try to put me in the guard. He can't put me in the guard, right? And if he tries to turn on his side, it's very difficult to turn sideways. So give that position a shot, guys. And just many of the videos in this course, what's important for you guys is to basically be in the experience of how it feels one way as opposed to how it feels another way. The goal is to experience and ask your partner for feedback. Which way feels heavier? Where am I creating more pressure? And the goal, of course, always is how can we create pressure without using strength and without using much energy ourselves. So give it a shot, guys. Hey guys, so now I'm going to give you guys a little drill of how to use this weight, how we basically shift our weight, and how I place my weight in different parts of a person's body to start to control their body. So what you'll notice from here is Zach's laying on the ground. In order for him to escape, for most of the escapes from the cross side, what you'll notice is your instructor or your coaches are always telling you to get to your side, right? And in order for you to get to your side, what you have to do is you actually have to lift one shoulder off the ground. So either this shoulder comes off the ground or this shoulder comes off the ground. And one of the reasons why it's so important to get to your side when you're on the bottom of cross-side is because if you want to actually put the person in your guard, it's much easier to put them in your guard when you're on your side. If you want to get back to your knees, you have to actually start by turning sideways before you can go belly down. And so it's a very important ability to be able to get to your side. Now, the last thing, and one of probably the even more important reason to get to your side is because if you're flat on your back and someone really knows how to create pressure, what happens is it becomes very difficult to breathe in and it becomes very uncomfortable. Okay. So we're going to talk about how to shift our weight. It's a very simple drill that we do, and it's how I shift my weight to control my opponent. And so this drill will be a no hands drill. Okay. So my partner is just going to put his hands on his belt. Okay. And for me, the first thing I'm going to do is I just line my chest up perpendicular to his shoulder line. Okay, so I'm just putting my chin at the top of the shoulder and I'm lining myself up across his shoulder line. So once I'm here, knees bent, okay, I'm on my toes. Now I'm going to start to transfer my weight into him by just pushing off my toes and lifting my knees off the ground. So right now there's no pressure, and now there is, right? Does it feel pressure?
Yes.
Yes. So the first thing he's going to do is he's going to try to turn towards me. So just try to turn towards me a little bit. No, yes, that way, right? And when he tries to turn towards me, what you notice is his shoulder starts to come off the ground a little bit, okay? When I feel his shoulder coming off the ground, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to push with my legs. Did you feel how I pushed your shoulder back to the ground?
Yeah.
Now, what I want you to do is turn away from me. Do you feel that? Yeah. When I feel you turning away, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull with my legs. Do you feel how that flattened you out? Yeah, okay. Turn towards me. I push. Turn away from me. Good. I pull. Turn towards me. I push. Turn away from me. I pull. So all I'm doing now is learning how to use my legs and shift my weight to be able to control my opponent without using my hands. Turn towards me. Yep. Push. Turn away from me. I feel him turning. Nope. So again, what happens when I'm laying cross-eyed is my opponent can only lift one shoulder at a time. He's either going to lift this shoulder or he's going to lift the other shoulder. My job is to keep him flat. And so what you notice is when I'm making these micro adjustments, all I'm doing is shifting my weight over the shoulder that's trying to come off the ground. And what you notice is, do you notice when I shift my weight over that shoulder, did it feel like there was a lot more weight to one side?
Yeah.
And it made it way harder for you to be able to get to your side, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So all I'm doing is transferring most of my weight. Now, the amazing thing with this is some of the pressure actually comes from my legs, from the pushing. So I can actually make myself create, it feels like way more pressure than what I actually weigh. Did you notice that? So in your experience, what would you say, how much would it feel like? You feel like there was 100 pounds on you, 200 pounds on you, 300 pounds? Oh. Just in your experience, what do you think that felt like laying on top of you?
It's too fit. So every time you went back and forth, it felt more and more. It felt like you were almost digging into me every time we went back and forth. So it
got more difficult to breathe,
exactly,
more difficult to breathe.
Heavier, so 250, 275, 300. I just kept getting
started feeling like,
yeah.
Right? Exactly. And that's the goal, because the more you move, do you notice you were starting to get tired with this drill? And so what's important for you guys is to give this drill a try. Once they start to get tired on the bottom, you can switch top to bottom and then you can go with the other side. So this is a drill that actually helps both people. It helps my opponent to start to develop the ability to get to their side dealing with pressure. Because anytime I drive, if you actually turn with me, that will help you get out. And my job is to shift my weight to shut it down, right? So I'm basically constantly just shifting my weight back and forth. And what you notice during that, I'm talking the whole time. So it's not really affecting my breathing and it's not really affecting my breath. I'm basically very relaxed. In the beginning, if you guys have not developed the muscles to basically maintain this position, it might feel uncomfortable for you. It might feel a little bit tiring for you, but over time, you're able to relax here. So the other thing with this drill too, when I do this is I want to be relaxed. So even though my hands are here, everything's just kind of relaxed and I'm just letting myself drop into him. The more relaxed I can be, the heavier I can be. right? If I stiffen up, you feel a difference as opposed to when I'm relaxed, right? And so again, turn one side or the other. It doesn't matter what side you turn. I just push. And if he tries to turn that way, I pull. Push and I pull. And just with this drill, what you'll notice is the person on the bottom tends to get tired much quicker. And again, all I'm using is my weight shifting back and forth to control him and keep him flat. Now, the reason that we do this as a no hands drill is because in jiu-jitsu, our philosophy is I need my hands to be able to attack. So if I rely on my hands to control my opponent, what happens is I lose the ability to attack because I need my hands to attack. So just for the concept of, or the position of cross-eyed, right? If my hands are free, I can attack his arm. I can attack a straight arm lock. I can attack a Kimura. I can attack his neck. I can attack here. And so it's important that I have my hands available to help me while my body controls the position. So if I want to go for a paper cutter, if I want to go for an Americana, I have all of that free to help me while every time he turns on his side, right, I'm able to control him with my body weight. So that's why we do this as a no hands drill. It starts to teach us how we can use our body and shifting our weight into places where they're trying to move to shut down movement and keep him flat, and therefore allowing us the ability to be able to attack with our arms. Instead of relying on our arms to hold, if I start to rely on my arms to hold him, A, I lose out on my ability to attack. B, with my arm underneath the head, now there's no weight, so I'm not able to create free pressure. And what happens is I lose my ability to attack because I'm also wasting a lot of strength. Because in order for me to control you, if I need to squeeze to control my opponent, well, what happens is my arms start to burn out. And so the understanding of weight distribution, using your weight to control your opponent, makes your ability to maintain top position so much more efficient and makes you far more dangerous. So give that a shot, guys. Give that drill a shot. And it's all we're doing is shifting our weight back and forth to basically pin them, and your hands are free to help you attack. Okay, guys. So this position is a variation of the cross-eyed position, and it's basically a position that I will transition into when I have the underhook. So, Zach, if you lay down, please. If you guys remember, when I'm chest to chest, okay, one of the main reasons that I actually start in this position is if my opponent has the underhook, okay, if he gets an underhook, instead of having my hand on this side of the body, immediately what I know is because if my hand is on this side of the body, if he stretches his arm and lifts his arm, he can kind of start to take my back. What I will always do is I always transition my arm to this side of the body and put my weight on him, because now try to use your underhook against me, it's different, right? So if we change this angle, what you can see is from here, let's turn this way, right? A little bit more, good. So from here, if I'm putting my weight on him and he has the underhook, if you start to stretch this arm, stretch your arm, yes, I start to fall off you. So anytime we're here, okay, from this position, turn over here, good. My hand's by his hip, elbow on this side, I put my weight on him. Now if you try to use your underhook against me, yes, it's very difficult. So just so you know, anytime my opponent has the underhook, I usually start off in this chest to chest cross-eyed with my hand on that side of the hip. And what that hand on the hip does is it shuts down his ability to use his underhook to be able to get to his side and take my back. But the more dominant hand positioning for me from the cross-side is if I have the underhook. And the reason is because once I establish the far side underhook, it becomes much harder for him to be able to get to his side because his own arm stops him. So just for me laying here with no weight on you, if you turn to your side, turn to your side. Do you see how your arm gets caught on my shoulder? So it becomes much more difficult for him, once I'm here, to turn to his side because his own arm is basically getting caught on my shoulder. So even if you try to turn belly down, try to turn belly down from here, turn towards me and go belly down. Do you feel how your shoulder gets caught? But what happens is, if you notice, this hand that was originally by his legs, preventing guard recovery, okay, and also shutting down the underhook, now what I've done is I've put it to this side. And because my arm is on this side, if I start to put my weight on him, what happens is, from here, if I put my weight on him by taking my knees off the ground, it opens up my hip for guard recovery, right? So can you bring your knee inside and put me back in the guard or half guard? Absolutely. And so the position that we use from this situation, once I establish an underhook, what I do is I actually turn my hips. Okay? So from here, see if you can put me in the guard. Okay? So let's see what that looks like from here. So from here, what you notice is, if my legs are in this position and I have my weight on my opponent, right? If he goes to put me in the guard, yes, there's a big giant hole, especially if I'm using my weight to put him in the guard. Once I turn my hip, okay, can you put me in the guard? Okay. So let's talk about all of the adjustments that I make from this position to basically guarantee that I can put the maximum amount of pressure on my opponent. Okay? So let's turn this way. Yeah, good. So the first thing I want you guys to experience with weight distribution when I'm cross-eyed on my opponent and I have an underhook is that from here, okay, if I'm sitting, if my hips are on the ground and my elbows on the ground, my weight is falling into the ground. How does this position feel for you?
It's just comfortable.
Feels comfortable, right? And normally what happens is now I need to rely on my hands to hold you, okay? What you notice is if you push and do a shrimp out, so just push against me and big shrimp out. Yep. Do you see how you're able to get away from me? Yep. So this is a very common escape from this position where sometimes they'll even grab some gi or sometimes they'll push on the face, right? Big shrimp. Yes, you're able to shrimp out. So the first thing I want to do is I want to put my weight on my opponent, okay? And the beautiful thing about weight distribution, as I mentioned earlier, is that once I put my weight on my opponent, I'm now forcing him to carry me. So the first thing I do, instead of having my hips on the ground, my elbow on the ground, is I'm actually going to take my hips off the ground and my elbow off the ground. Okay? So now if you try to shrimp away from me, just start to shrimp. Shrimp. Do you feel how you're not able to move away from me? So even without me holding him, right? Every time you try to move, does it feel like you're able to lose me? Does it feel like you're losing me? Or does it feel like I'm just staying on you? Yeah, so I'm able to actually stay on him without using any hands to hold, without having to hold, okay? So the first adjustment we make from this position is just taking my elbow or hand off the ground and taking my hips off the ground. And you notice here, no pressure, pretty comfortable. And then once how does that feel? Different?
Yeah, horrible.
Horrible. If I say, hey, Zach, I need you to stay here for the next 3 minutes, do you think you could do it?
No.
No? 3 minutes?
Much pain.
Okay. Does it feel like you're able to take full deep breaths?
No.
So what you notice is we're fresh right now, right? We're completely fresh. And so when you're fresh, you can actually survive a little bit longer. But imagine if you were tired and gassing, right? And then you're not able to take full breaths. It's getting a little bit uncomfortable, right? And do you notice it gets a little bit worse as time goes on?
Yeah, it does.
Right? So I'll take my weight off Zach right now just to give him a chance to breathe. But you'll notice the more time I'm there, the worse it gets for you. So the beautiful thing is the whole time I'm resting, and you notice no difference in my breath at all, or no difference in my ability to talk or breathe. But there's a tremendous difference in your ability to talk. Did you feel like you can breathe better now that I'm sitting on the ground?
Oh yeah, much better. I can talk.
Okay. So that's the first adjustment we're going to make, is just taking our hips and elbow off the ground. Okay. The second adjustment that I make, okay, is this. If you think about two scales on the ground. What happens is when I put my weight on my opponent, my weight is actually in two separate positions. It's on him and it's in my feet. So the goal for me is to actually transfer as much of my weight into my opponent as possible. If I do something like this, that's heavy and uncomfortable, correct?
Yes.
But if I actually slide my center over his body a little bit more, okay, now my hips are on his chest. Does that feel heavier?
Oh, yeah.
How much heavier would you say?
At least 50% heavier.
At least 50% heavier. And is it hard for you to breathe right now?
Yeah, it's very hard.
Does it look like it's hard for me to breathe?
No.
Okay. So from here, I can rest all day, but you're not resting, correct?
No.
So what you notice is just by shifting my hip across to his body, right? There's a tremendous amount more pressure that I'm able to create using zero strength at all while I'm resting. So that's the second adjustment we'll make, is I'll adjust my hips so that I'm a little bit higher on his chest. And what you notice is when I'm laying in this cross-side position, I'm laying across his chest, not across his belly. Okay. The third adjustment we'll make. So once I have my hips on my opponent, what happens is, let me take my elbow off the ground. There we go. That's heavier, right? What happens is I'm very overcommitted this way. So, Zach, if you actually push me to this side, you feel how you can kind of take me?
Yeah.
So the last adjustment I make is I actually, because I'm so overcommitted to this side, what I do is I stretch my legs out and I'm actually going to pull my legs to the ground. Does that feel heavier?
Yeah, it feels very heavy.
Okay. So try to throw me that way now. Yeah. And so what happens is because my body is actually pulling in this direction, when he tries to turn that way, try to turn that way. Does it feel it's more difficult to turn that way?
Absolutely.
Good. So those are the three adjustments we make to create pressure. And what you notice is it doesn't take me very much effort to create that amount of pressure. In your experience, how does that feel for you?
Feels awful.
Feels awful?
I feel trapped.
Feels like it's crushing you and it's very difficult to move, right?
Oh, yeah.
Good. So hand positioning, we'll go over hand positioning here in a second, but just make sure anytime I'm with the underhook, okay, and I have this position where my hips are off the ground, my weight is on my opponent, that my hand is always to the side of my head and my arm is plucking this elbow. The beautiful thing about this positioning is every time he tries to pull his elbow down to get to his side, you feel how you pull me into you. And if you pull this elbow down to get to your side, you feel how every time you pull me into you. So what happens is every time you try to pull to get to your side, you actually increase the amount of pressure on your chest. Makes it very difficult for you to escape, right? Okay, guys. So this is a drill that we do now from the cross-side position with the underhook to also, again, keep my opponent flat. Again, so much of the control relies on me shifting my weight. In jiu-jitsu, what's important to understand is my opponent is always going to be trying to move to get out. They're always going to try to shift and try to find a place where they're comfortable, right? By trying to get to their side, by trying to find a little bit of space. My job is to take away that ability, to take away his ability to be comfortable and take away his ability to get to his side. So, Zach, if you lay down, okay. So again, once I have the underhook, what's important for me is that I'm putting my hand on the side of my head. The reason I put the hand on the side of my head, and the other thing I do is once I put the hand on the side of my head, I actually bring my elbow in towards his shoulder so that he can't pull his elbow out. Try to pull your elbow out from here. Try to pull your arm out. It feels pretty stuck. If I do this, do you feel like you can pull your elbow out? So when I put my hand in here, my elbow goes underneath your shoulder and my hand goes on the side of your head. Okay. Now it's really difficult for you to pull your arm out. The other important thing about doing this is it actually prevents him from being able to push my face. So if I'm fighting, the last thing I want is him to reach around and stick his thumb in my eye, to hit me in the face, to hammer fist me, or to push my chin back. So the nice thing about this is actually if he tries to reach his hand around my face, right, I have Americana. So the Americana is right here. Anytime he tries to use his hand, anytime he brings his arm around to try to bring it in front of my face, I can grab the wrist and I already have an attack. Okay. So again, I'm setting more of my hips on his chest And the higher up underneath his armpits I am, the better. So the higher up underneath his arms, the more weight distribution he'll feel. So tell everyone how you feel when I'm laying here on your belly.
Not too bad.
That feels pretty comfortable. It feels okay. As opposed to...
Oh, yeah.
Does that feel worse for you?
So much worse.
So when you're doing all these drills, when you guys are playing around with the weight distribution, it's important that your partner is giving you feedback so that you can understand what they're experiencing. I'm always checking in. When I was first learning and developing all this, I would always lay on my training partner and say, hey, how does this feel? And then I would make adjustments. Does this feel worse or does this feel lighter? And then I keep making adjustments because the goal is, how do I use my weight the most efficient way possible? So where can I position myself where I'm able to create the most amount of pressure and where it's able to have the most effect on my opponent? So from here, my hips go on his chest, hand underneath, and now I'm just cupping his elbow. Spread my legs so that there's no guard recovery. And then what you notice right now is I'm actually resting my elbow on the ground. And this, even though it's uncomfortable, it's not as bad as that. Do you notice when I took my elbow off the ground? So just pay attention, guys. When you get to this position, if I'm here, I can actually relieve pressure, take a lot of pressure off my opponent just by placing my elbow on the ground. Now, do you feel how most of my weight's going into my elbow? Mm-hmm. And when I take my elbow off the ground, how does that feel?
Horrible.
So here's the drill, guys. Your job is to start to turn on your side. So turn this way. Yes. Anytime I feel my opponent turn sideways, do you feel you're getting some relief of pressure? Mm-hmm. Right? My job is to push with the legs. Do you feel that? How that flattens you out? Does it feel worse now? If he turns away from me, so turn away from me now. Yep. Right? Does that feel like you have some relief of pressure? Right? My job is to pull with the legs. Okay. So while I'm controlling here, if he tries to pull his elbow down, yep, it's a very relaxed grip, right? I'm very relaxed. Mm-hmm. So anytime he tries to pull his arms to the ground, does that feel like it's increasing pressure on you? Mm-hmm. And if you try to turn one side or the other, yep, just turn. I let him turn and I flatten him out. Turn the other way. Yep, he tries to turn, I flatten him out. So the goal from here is I'm just pushing and pulling with my legs to create pressure, right? And do I feel heavy? Mm-hmm. Great. So that's the goal, guys. The goal is, again, how do I use my weight? How do I shift my weight to basically control movement, to create pressure? And a lot of times, just from this position, especially during a training when your opponent starts to get tired, this is one of the main positions where you will get a lot of taps because the amount of pressure that you can create from this position is pretty incredible. And what you notice is it's very difficult to breathe from there, right? Yeah. So especially during a hard training, towards the end of a round, middle of a round, end of a round, if you've been going at a quicker pace, a faster pace, once you're able to settle into this position, many times what happens is the pressure on the chest prevents the person from breathing, from being able to breathe, and you're able to get basically a submission due to asphyxiation. So guys, one of the things that we're doing with the weight distribution and with our ability to create pressure is, as you get better with this skill, you will be able to start tapping people out with just pressure alone. And especially people that tend to have more weight, it will become a little bit easier for you to tap people with pressure. Now, a lot of times people think that it's not a real submission, but what I want to tell you is it actually is a real submission. What we're doing is what they call traumatic asphyxiation. And so not long ago, there was an event in Houston. It was the Astroworld concert with Travis Scott. And at this event, at this concert, what happened is as the artist took the stage, there was 100,000 people at the concert. And what happened is everybody rushed the stage. As everybody rushed the stage, the people in the front started getting compressed by the crowd running up from behind them. And 8 people ended up dying in that event. The coroner's reported that one person had drugs in their system, and the cause of death for everyone else was traumatic asphyxiation. Basically, they died from not being able to breathe. What happens from this situation is if you think about breathing, in order for you to breathe, your lungs have to expand. And in order for you to breathe, we have multiple muscles that actually control breathing. I think there's something like 36 muscles that actually control breathing. So it's not just your diaphragm. All of your intercostals actually help your lungs to expand to be able to take oxygen in. Over time, so your breathing muscles, just like any other muscles, they're either strong or they're weak. So if you're not working and developing your breathing, your muscles, the breathing muscles tend to be weaker. The other thing too, just like any other muscles, is your breathing muscles will get tired over time. So imagine if you're doing any exercise like a bench press, and let's say we just put 100 pounds on the bar. If you're a good athlete, if you're a pretty strong person, maybe you can lift it 5 times, 10 times, 15 times, no problem. Once you start to get past a certain threshold, what you notice is your arms will start shaking. And so even though it was very, very lightweight in the beginning and it was easy to do, when you start getting into 20 reps, 30 reps, 40 reps, 50 reps, if you're a very, very strong person, what happens is even that light weight, your arms start to shake. And eventually it'll get to the point where you won't be able to lift the weight again. That's what we're doing with the breathing muscles. What happens is once I put my weight on my opponent, even though they're able to breathe in the beginning, maybe very small and short breaths, what happens is the weight over time, their breathing starts to get more shallow and more shallow. They're not able to actually push all of the weight off their chest. The muscles that dictate and control breathing will start to get tired over time from basically moving all of that weight. And eventually, the person dies from asphyxiation. And so this is a very common occurrence also. You hear about it in earthquakes, where there's an earthquake and something heavy falls on someone's chest. And what happens is there's so much pressure on the chest that the person's not able to breathe and they die from asphyxiation. And so that's the amazing thing with weight distribution. Once you learn to develop it as a tool in your game, you can basically suffocate people and get people to chap with just pressure alone by basically preventing them to breathe. And did you have that experience that it was very, very difficult to breathe when I'm sitting on your chest?
Yeah, I kept getting shallower and shallower in my chest. Like I was struggling to get air in.
And so, yeah, so a lot of times once we get to these positions, I know that it's just a matter of time before we get the tap. So if you can get to one of these positions, if you can maintain pressure and maintain the position, it's just a matter of time before your opponent taps.